So the first thing that I do is I take just about everything off of the guitar because you don't want anything getting in the way. And ultimately you're going to end up removing it anyways to when you paint the binding, and you don't want to, especially the Bigsby will flop around and get in your way and cause all kinds of problems. You're going to have to take it off anyways because of this area here. So take everything out the wiring harness. It's always a good idea to do that because make sure the wiring harness works, that all the pots are cleaned before you put it back in the guitar. Obviously this jet needs all the binding replaced. I already took it off of the neck and removed the, and you'll see it in the pictures, remove the red markers. Some people believe that the red markers are 1/16 of an inch. They're not, they're smaller. I put the micrometer on it. This is a really beautiful gent. One of the unique characteristics is it doesn't have the access hole in the back, which is nice. And the only reason why they put the access holes in was for the mute. So this one doesn't have the dial-up mute either. I use razor blades, number 9 razor blades. They come packed individually like this. I wear a P100 respirator, which is the same thing you use with asbestos. The reason is this dust, I'm not wearing it now because I'm talking a little bit, because this dust is unhealthy. And it's celluloid, it's the same stuff that film used in the film industry before safety film. So it's also highly flammable. The first thing I do is you can come by and you can score this if you want, because what you want to do is you want to make sure that you break the finish connection between the body and the binding. One of the issues so when they build the guitar for any finish, they put the binding on and then they sand everything flush and ferret it all in. It's really easy to do it that way. The problem with when you're putting the binding back on, none of that applies. You'll know that this has a slight radius to it, and especially where the binding meets the wood, there's a radius. So you're going to have this gap or a drop down when you put the binding on. You'll see it later. And not to be too tedious, take the razor blade, go all the way around. I usually take this small dead blow hammer and just make sure I'm through the first layer, and then I come back with this chisel and I work this out like this. And you can see how it's just turning to powder. And I know people will ask the question, if you can go down to these 2 layers, can you just leave them? And the answer is absolutely not, because it is rotten, as you can see right here, all the way down. And if you do that, you're just putting good binding over bad binding. It's ultimately going to fail. And there's nothing, it's not a shortcut at all. So do it right the first time. You also have areas here where you have to be very careful because the way the grain goes here. So when you're taking the binding off, you have to worry about tear out. You have to worry about this wood coming off with the binding. Where you get down here where it's more 90 degrees, it's not a big deal. It's when you're going with the grain. From here to here is a critical area. Sometimes like to start there so you can spend more time and concentrate on getting it right. In addition, scoring here, which I failed to mention, is something you want to do. And occasionally have separation. There's areas where the binding is almost in perfect shape. It's very difficult to come off. And then there's areas like here where it's just, I could pop it off with my fingernail and it'll come right out. And this I have a hard time with the chisel. So that's just something to note. The other thing I want to mention is I've been asked, well, why can't you get a machine to take this off? Or why can't you get a machine to put it on? These guitars, being as old as they are, most of this was hand formed, or it was at least the mold that they bend it with was handmade. So these angles aren't perfect. The radius, so you couldn't get anything to follow this, and everyone is different. So you don't really have a choice. It's labor intensive, hand work. That's why it costs so much money, and it is what it is. The other thing is, I take my hand on the end of the chisel like this, so that I'm controlling it going up and down, where with my left hand, my right hand is controlling the forward pressure, so that you don't slip. If it was all like this, it would be really easy, but this is really nice the way it's coming off. But as I said before, we're getting into that area right here where you're going to start going with the grain, and it's going to want to start to take wood with it. So you have to be really careful. Well, that just fell off, so. I don't typically doing this while the guitar is in this position, but because of the camera angle, well, my iPhone. Is laying on the fence of my table saw. It's also good to know you don't force it. You never force anything. You work with it. If there's resistance, there's a reason there's resistance. So it'll tell you when you need to do this, because it's not going anywhere, and we're in that critical area again with the wood grain. So you can't be distracted. You have to watch and feel everything that's going on. The other thing is when you're lucky to get it loose like this, where it wasn't really glued real well, just don't pull it this way. Pull up, so you're taking the scored area and you're helping to separate it from the wood. Sound was an email of somebody probably saying, "Where's my guitar?" And usually, right down in here is a difficult area. A lot of times it'll pop right out of there, but not always.